Roger Calow, Head of Water Policy Programme, Overseas Development Institute. You surprised one or two people this morning during the course of your presentation, the question and answer session, when you said that water must be at the top of everyone's agenda, and it isn't. Why is that?
I think there are various reasons. The experience I've had talking to farmers in India, in China, has been that while people recognise that water is vital for domestic use and vital as a productive input, firstly, it's underpriced, and that's partly because it's very difficult to levy a price across swathes of rural areas where the logistics and the politics are not favourable. And secondly, it's because there are other things going on in their lives, particularly in fast-growing, transitioning economies, that are pulling people out of agriculture and out of resource-dependent livelihoods. This is a good thing. It's part of development. It spreads risk. But it means natural resources, the climate, rainfall becomes a less important part of people's lives.
You actually said that there are no incentives to invest in water.
There are often few incentives to invest in water conservation for a farmer. That's partly because land and water rights are often so poorly defined. So, for example, a farmer who invests in water conservation will want to ensure that he keeps the water he conserves. But if property rights are ambiguous, poorly defined or non-existent, and the water that is saved is simply pumped or taken by somebody else, then what's the point? You don't claim title to your water until you've pumped or used it.
You're kind of painting a fairly bleak picture.
Not as bleak, I think, as some, because I'm not of the view that the problems are environmentally determined, in the sense that water scarcity in terms of physical availability is always the biggest problem that people face. I think there are ways of coping, and national economies we can learn from. South Africa, Singapore, which cope and have adapted to very low levels of water use and water consumption. So building the adaptive capacity to deal with scarcity is tremendously important, and achieves, or can help achieve, security, even if the physical numbers, the physical availability is very low.
But there are major problems already, but there are even bigger problems around the corner in sub-Saharan Africa, aren't there, where the demographic changes are going to be massive?
Indeed, and one of the biggest problems we face is simply extending access to reliable basic water services. There is good news. We've hit the Millennium Development Goal on water some 3 years early globally, but that is because the numbers are very much skewed by progress in China and India. Progress in Africa lags behind, so they will not hit the MDG of reducing by half the numbers of people without access to safe water by 2015. And with this population growth, it's going to be very difficult not just to extend services, but also to sustain the ones that are already there. That is not a water scarcity. That's not about water availability. That is about extending access. It's about governance, finance, and infrastructure. It's not an availability problem for small amounts of water.
One of the issues that you face, and you made this point, is that there are no data sets for measuring water or for calculating water usage in the world.
There are very few. Of course, we have good ones in the UK, although we still have our own uncertainties about some of the systems. But certainly in developing countries, those the data is often pretty poor on water, not just availability, but also on patterns of use. And both governments and donors need to get much more serious than they have been thus far in investing in those systems and linking them through to decision making.
If there's one overarching message of yours that you would want people to take away today, what is it?
I think my message would be, don't view scarcity in one-dimensional terms and only being about the physical numbers and physical water availability, because the problems people have in large parts of the developing world are actually more around access and equity, not about raw water availability. But the gloomy arithmetic on water, some of those gloomy messages are useful in alerting us to the need for action, the fact that we do have a problem, but we need to balance that perspective with not just supply, but also be looking at the demand, the equity, the access.
Roger Calow, thank you very much.
Thank you.